Welcome on in, Browns fans, to another conversation here on Cleveland Browns on SI. Anthony Moeglin, Spencer German with you to break down the latest from with everything surrounding the Cleveland Browns with about a week to go before free agency kicks off next Wednesday. We implore you to please subscribe to our channel here at Cleveland Browns on SI. All kinds of great content for you. Obviously, during the season, we got all kinds of post-game press conferences and all that. Off-season, though, we got a lot of stuff up there for you. Different people speaking on what's to come this offseason, the draft, Andrew Berea and Kevin Stefanski from the Combine last week, but also prospects from the Combine last week. If you want to hear what Shedeur Sanders had to say, Cam Ward had to say, we got all those guys covered for you here on this very channel. So please subscribe, show us your support, show us your love, because we do our best to cover the Cleveland Browns for each and every single day. And Megs, it's we've had a chance to kind of catch our breath here after the Combine. It was an eventful week, a lot going on, a lot of different conversations, a lot of things that came out of Indy. But now we sort of turn the page and we get ready for free agency.
Yeah, it's a really fun time of the offseason, right? Sometimes, especially in Browns world, sometimes the offseason's more entertaining than the actual season. But really cool, really cool time of the year, right? As guys start to move places. You've seen a lot of big names that are going to get cut. Devontae Adams going to get released from the New York Jets today. You got a couple, Cooper Kupp, obviously the Matt Stafford story of last week. There's a lot of big
Saquon Barkley got paid. He's the highest paid running back ever. Our running backs coming back. We don't even have that as a topic today, but our running backs coming back, Mix.
It's Saquon Barkley leading the charge, man. It's a really interesting time. It's very fun to see how these teams are going to start to reconstruct themselves. A big conversation, one that we don't even have on the board here, is the Sam Darnold conversation. That is super interesting. I've seen that. I'm sure if you're in this show watching us here, you've seen a lot of stats surrounding the Sam Darnold stuff, and it's like he's the first quarterback to ever have double-digit wins and not be re-signed by the team that he did it with. It's pretty amazing stuff kind of happening all around the NFL, and obviously in Cleveland, there's a storylines galore. There's a bunch of stuff happening right up the street here in Berea.
We are going to talk about some of the veteran quarterbacks out there, but I think the Sam Darnold thing is interesting because Matt Stafford was the first domino to fall in the quarterback market. Everyone was kind of waiting on that, and now that that's out of the way, Sam Darnold honestly might be the next big one. That might be the next one that sort of falls into place as teams kind of figure these things out. But we'll talk about that here a little bit more coming up. I do want to circle back to, this kind of feels like a post-combine topic, like something that sort of stems from what we learned about the draft and what we learned about the Browns last week at the Combine. And it centers around the idea that Cam Ward is essentially the consensus number one quarterback in this class now. Seems like he really aced his interviews. Teams really liked what he had to say. And that's part of the equation. The tape is the biggest thing. And the tape already sort of spoke for itself. I think I've been on the record saying that Cam Ward is the better talent in this class, better than Shedeur Sanders in that way. And so because of that, I believe the team drafting him is probably leaning on the fact that there's more upside here. We have a chance to maybe get our franchise quarterback. And so this opens up an interesting conversation, Megs, because as the Browns, continue their evaluation, we already know they're hosting a bunch of these guys on pre-draft visits. Shedeur Sanders is coming this week. Cam Ward's apparently coming this week now. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, all the guys that are in consideration for number 2 are coming to visit Berea this week. But as we sort of get as that sort of plays out, who the Browns like at the quarterback position is going to be crucial. And it's going to be key as to what they might do in the draft. And, there's a chance they fall in love with Cam Ward and he's their guy. Now, the reason I think this gets even more interesting is with everybody, with the word in NFL circles being that Cam Ward is the top guy, it sets the stage for an interesting scenario where if multiple teams like Cam Ward, they're going to maybe consider trading up to one to get him. And the Browns then have to sort of weigh what they would be willing to give up to trade up to one to get him. Because if they think that's their franchise quarterback, then, you can't miss this opportunity.
Dude, it's a story that we've lived before. So you go back to 2016. It's the 2016 draft, the 2 top quarterbacks coming out. Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. The Browns were the number 2 overall pick, and guess who was in the front office at the time? It was Andrew Berea. This was one of his first years in Cleveland, and the Browns really wanted Jared Goff. They wanted him. They were the number 2 overall pick. they get jumped by the LA Rams. The LA Rams go and go get Jared Goff, the guy that Cleveland wanted. Browns trade back down to 15 and draft Corey Coleman. And it's just such it's a sliding doors moment in Browns history, because it's like, okay, if you would have went up and got Jared Goff, what would the next 5 years have been? Probably you don't know. You don't know, but it certainly would have been a better draft pick than picking Corey Coleman. And obviously, hindsight's always 2020. But the scary part is, because you're the number 2 overall pick, it's almost like, dude, getting the number 2 overall pick is like, it's kind of like, almost a curse in a way, because you don't know if teams are actually interested in trading up with Tennessee, if Tennessee's blowing smoke to get Cleveland to go pay for something. Like, there's a lot of stuff that Cleveland has to weigh if they decide that Cam Ward's the guy and they need to go get one. And if it is, I think you got to kind of go up there and try to do it. If you're thinking Cam Ward's your guy, you got to go try and get him and pay what you have to.
Well, and I've kind of been saying, like, if they want a player, they're sort of screwed at number 2, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, if they want to trade, obviously there's always the option to trade back, and then you're not like really screwed, because you could just get a bunch of draft capital and no one's going to blame you for that. But if they want to like pick a player, they're kind of screwed, because like I just said, Cam Ward apparently is the number 1 quarterback. Someone's going to probably try to go get him at 1, whether it's the Titans or a different team. And that you could be left kind of holding the bag. And I don't know, like, I'm worried about drafting Abdul Carter because of the foot thing. I'm not worried about drafting Travis Hunter. I do think he's kind of like one of those generational talent type players, but is that really something that the Browns need right now? A guy that's a wide receiver or a defensive back. Like, they have frontline players at both those positions. So yeah, like, it'd be a nice name. It'd help jersey sales in the team store, but I don't know that like Travis Hunter solves a lot of your problems.
Dude.
And then it's like Shedeur Sanders, who some teams now are saying is like a 2nd round pick. Like, I don't know. But go ahead.
If you don't have a quarterback, you don't win, right? And Cleveland is the perfect example of that. You've now wasted 2 Hall of Fame careers. Joe Thomas never won ever. Myles Garrett once out because Cleveland doesn't win. And it's like, all right, you go get Travis Hunter. Certainly the fan base is going to be excited. He's going to make big plays, but who's going to be throwing him the football?
I guess the reason I guess the thing with Travis Hunter for me is like drafting him feels like a rebuild. Like, all this team has said is like, we're not rebuilding. Yeah, true. We want to try to convince Myles to stay somehow, some way. I don't know what they're going to do for that. But like, drafting Travis Hunter just screams like, all right, we're starting new with this really great talent that everyone's excited about. And like, he can play both ways, and we're going to use him on offense and defense. Like, that's kind of what, I don't know. It doesn't feel like something you do if you're really trying to stay competitive right now. So I don't know. Like, it just, given where they're at, it just kind of feels like they're screwed to do unless they trade back. Or trade up, I guess. Like, if they go up and get their quarterback, that's fine. But the larger point for me, Megs, is this. I don't know if they ultimately settle on Cam Ward. From my understanding, it sounds like leaving the combine, there's this consensus that the Browns do favor Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders. So that take that for what it is. Whether or not they favor him enough to be like, that's our franchise quarterback, let's go get him, remains to be seen. But if they come to that conclusion, they have to be willing to move up the board to get him. Like, they have to be willing to make that move, because you might not be drafting number 2 next year. Like, you're in this opportunity. You have this opportunity right now. You are drafting at the top of the board right now. So you can't let that go to waste just because you're worried about paying the price. And I caught some blowback on another platform where I do a podcast because, I mentioned the idea that the Browns might have to give up their 1st round pick next year to get a deal done to move up to 1. And I understand where like people are like, how would you have to do that to move up 1 spot? My big thing on this is, look, like, you can use the trade charts that are out there, the draft trade charts, where it gives you like the values for different things. The general average for like overpaying to move up is like 3,000 quote unquote points is what they call it. And so you every team that's traded up is giving up like 3,000 or more points extra to move up. So you pay a premium already. Like, if you're going to move up, no matter where it's from, you're always giving up more than what it's probably actually worth to go up to get that pick, because you're generally trading up to get a quarterback, and to get a franchise quarterback, it costs you extra. So I'm sitting here today, I don't think they would have to give up their 1st round pick next year, especially because if they give up their 2nd round pick this year, it's kind of like a pseudo 1st rounder because it's the 1st pick of the 2nd round. But but where this gets interesting is like, if there's a bidding war, if the Giants are like, hey, we're going to give the Titans a 1st next year and this year and a bunch of other picks, and they come back to the Browns and they're like, hey, the Giants are giving us a 2nd 1st rounder next year. What are you going to do? Then maybe they have to throw in that 1st rounder. So they have to be willing to do that if they think this is their guy. That's my overarching point. I'm not saying they will, have to do that. But if they have to give up their first rounder, they have to do it, because if they feel this is their quarterback, that's the decision you have to make.
Yeah, and I would say at some point, there's obviously a cost for everything, but there's also like, it becomes too expensive, and I think that that's also something that the Browns have to balance here, because right, like I just said a second ago, I'm kind of going to eat my words here just a little bit, but this Browns roster has a ton of holes in it, right? Where it's like, all right, if you start to mortgage the future again, like you better be right. You better be right. You did it once, and it didn't pan out. But if you go give up 2 first-round picks for another quarterback, or one first-round pick for another quarterback, like you better be right and you better hit on it. So it's a risky, dude. It's it's not a great spot to be in, just because you have no power, you have no control. And like you said too, if they're going to get a player, if you're in this to be a player, not a position, you're kind of in a tough spot at 2. Now, all this could be for naught, because maybe they are in love with Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And they're like, all right, either one's good. Either one will work for us. If that's the case, it's a whole different story. But as we're starting to read these tea leaves, man, it feels like Cam Ward's starting to get a lot of that hype.
Yeah, and they'll get a better read on like how teams view Shedeur. And if, I don't know, maybe this is a scenario where if people really think he's a second rounder, I mean, hell, maybe that means the Browns can wait and trade back up from the 33rd pick and take him and take somebody else at 2. I don't know. Like there's a number of options there, but my main point here is like, if they identify this as the guy, I get why it's risky. But I've also been saying like it took a big swing and a big chance to bring in Deshaun Watson. It's probably going to take a big swing to get out of the situation if you identify that quarterback. But I don't know, as much as I understand like trying to position yourself to get one next year, the Browns don't necessarily have the timeline to do that either. Like the pressure's on this regime to get this figured out now. And that does kind of, I think, bring us to the next thing we want to get into in relation to Shedeur, because, Shedeur is the number 2 guy in this class, but his stock seems to be changing based off I think that some of this I think is so stupid, Anthony, because it's like, how did we go into the combine feeling like he was like, I don't want to say on par with Cam Ward, because I do think Cam Ward was still the better prospect going in, but now he's plummeted so far that it's like, yeah, this guy's not even worth a first-round pick anymore. Like, I don't know how the discrepancy comes that much, because he came off as like brash in interviews. Like, what did you expect? It's Deion Sanders' kid. Like, Deion Sanders is brash. He's going out saying,
wait, Shedeur hasn't been brash all year long, right? He hasn't been.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, what are we talking about? Like, so I don't know how that becomes like the turnoff, that now like he's plummeting down boards, unless it's just like this was the first opportunity for people to like really start talking to each other in a public setting at the combine. Sure. And so now the truth is getting out. But listen, I buy that Shedeur, I buy that there's separation between Cam and Shedeur. I don't buy that Shedeur's stock has plummeted so far that he's not going to be taken in the first round.
No, I mean, you get into rumor season here, and it's like, all right, there's somebody somewhere trying to start this narrative, and they got the right people saying the right things. Maybe it's Deion, like, hey, I don't want him going anywhere in the top 10. I want him to go to a team.
Well, there was somebody who said that Shedeur tanked these interviews on purpose. Like he came off that way because he didn't want certain teams to take him.
Spence, you were there. I mean, I watched it. Like, it didn't seem anything egregious. Like, it didn't seem anything out of the ordinary.
Well, I mean, that's like his press conference, but I'm like in the team meet. I guess in the meetings with teams is where he came off brash. But either way, like what he said at the podium, it just felt like it was Shedeur Sanders to me. Like it was the same Shedeur Sanders that I feel like I've seen talk and post-game press conferences and, in other settings where he's just like, he's a confident guy. Like, he was Deion Sanders' son. Like that's kind of what I expect, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Surprise, right? I saw a mock draft where the Browns got the Browns got Travis Hunter
and Travis.
And Shedeur at 33.
I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe. I mean, if he falls far enough, maybe.
Well, okay, Spence. All right, so let's talk about this, right? You talk about the price you got to pay to go from 2 to 1. You wouldn't do this, but is there a scenario where Shedeur does fall to 15 or he's around at 16? Does Cleveland then mortgage picks? Maybe they took Abdul Carter with 2, or they traded back to move back to get Abdul Carter, and you gather up some picks there, and then you repackage it if Shedeur does drop. I don't know that that's a realistic scenario, but that Andrew Berry and his staff are playing that out, and there's got to be a spot where you're like, oh, I'll go up to 18 and go get him if he's still there. I don't think he will.
And the key is you have 2 third-rounders and you have the second round that's almost like a first
ton
round.
of draft capital.
Those allow you to make moves later in the first round to maybe get back up and get a guy or whatever. And the reason that's important too is because remember, if you draft a guy in the first round, they come with a 5th-year option. So especially when you're talking about a quarterback, like if Shedeur actually fell, and that's another reason why I don't think Shedeur is falling out of the first round. Because if somebody thinks there's a chance he is going to be good, they will even trade up into the first round to get him because they're going to be like, yeah, I'd rather have the 5th-year option on him where I can make a decision, like, is he the guy, is he not the guy? Or that makes him more valuable in a trade potentially if you were to trade him later, like, hey, you got a 5th-year option to try to figure it out with him. So I just don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I stand on it right now. But yeah, is there a world where maybe the Browns do both? I guess, like in some crazy trade scenario or whatever that could happen. I don't necessarily think it will. But yeah, I think the Browns still view Shedeur as like a potential option, just maybe not at number 2. That's kind of how I feel about it at this point. Like, it's like, I don't know that they would pull the trigger at 2. I mean, you got Mike Florio going around saying like, if you pull the trigger on Shedeur at 2, the coach might as well hand in his pink slip. So clearly there's a narrative out there that this isn't a good pick that early, but I still think he's not falling out of the first round.
That's the first time I heard that Florio. I didn't even see that.
Florio could be a little hyperbolic.
Florio's Florio. That's freaking guy. No, it's an interesting conversation, man. And that I feel like, throughout the rest of these 2 months, or I guess month and a half, 7 weeks here, it's going to ebb and flow a little bit more. Yeah. Maybe next week Cam Ward's going to, be, oh, this guy isn't even a 4th round pick. You don't know how all that stuff's going to go. But
and then like Will Howard's going to come out of nowhere. It's going to be like Will Howard.
Oh my gosh, dude. The Will Howard is horrible because he had a bad day at the combine thing. Is
honestly
that's a song for another time.
The problem here, real quick on the Will Howard thing. This is why the guys don't throw.
Yes.
Because they get ridiculed like this for like weeks on end after they have a bad outing. And it's like, so what, why would I do this? Like, why would I subject myself to this and let you guys just like rip me up and down and like change the way my future gets determined if this is what's going to happen? So then you get mad that guys don't throw, and then they throw again with receivers that they don't really know and
routes they've never thrown.
Right. And then you're like getting mad about it. It's like,
it's crazy. And all right, I played quarterback at a small level football, but it just pisses me off that like that's the storyline coming out of it, because you don't understand if you never throw to a receiver ever, and then you're going to go out and throw a 16-yard comeback that's supposed to be a timing route off of your top hitch. You've never thrown to this guy before. You are going to complete. I don't care if it's routes on air. I don't care what it is. You're not completing that ball. Sorry.
Megs has the quarterback perspective we all need. So this is good stuff.
Guy you've been throwing to
stuff
all year. You'll incomplete it. You'll dirt it in routes.
It's also just funny because like I missed most of his throwing, but I saw some of them, and I saw like the beginning of it. I went back and watched, and like I was on Twitter that night, and it was like people were like, yeah, Will Howard had some rough throws in the beginning, but he really finished well.
Dude.
And then like I woke up the next day and it was just like a shitstorm. It was like
this guy
sucked. He's terrible. Kyle McCord's better. I was like, oh my God. It was like
wait. Let's just rewind. This isn't Ohio State on SI, but let's just rewind 3 weeks.
But if you want to subscribe to that channel too, you can find Anthony Moeglin over there.
Come on over. But we can just rewind a month to show that Will Howard can throw the football. I'm not even.
Can we just let's just sum it up like this. Let the tape do the talking. Like Will Howard,
dude.
Will Howard had a really good playoff run where he was throwing some really good balls. And I'm not saying he's perfect. There was a lot of like being lifted up by guys that were really talented around him, but I think he's better than people are giving him credit for from a combine performance. Just saying.
The guys aren't going to work out. Like the combine is literally it's going to cease to exist in 10 years because nobody is going to work out. Nobody at all. They're not even. They won't even run 40s. They won't. It's. I'm on tangent. I got fired up.
Anthony's mad. That feels like a good place to transition to the veteran quarterback market, where the Browns will obviously be shopping. I think the bargain bin is a good way to put it. Like they're going to weigh a lot of options, but there's only so many they can actually afford. I think this market honestly starts like the headliner is Sam Darnold and the fact that he didn't get franchise tag today. Vikings are leaving the door open for him to maybe still come back. But I mean, to me, this feels like the writing's kind of on the wall here. Like they seem like they're ready to pivot to JJ McCarthy if they're willing to let Sam Darnold test the market. And the problem for the Browns is, in relation to Sam Darnold is I just think they're going to get priced out. Like somebody's going to be willing to pay more than the Browns are. And I get like I am the biggest proponent of you can always manipulate the cap to afford anybody you want if you really wanted to. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but it just seems far-fetched that they would invest that type of money in another quarterback, especially if it's not like the guy. Like I don't think they're gonna anybody who's signing Sam Darnold is like, all right, this guy can start, he can kind of get us going in the right direction. But I don't think anybody's signing Sam Darnold like we found our franchise quarterback.
Right. No, I'm a Sam Darnold fan. He's kind of on that same exact same trajectory as Baker Mayfield, right? Where they got drafted same year, started at a bad, with a struggling franchise, didn't go the right way. For Sam, it was much worse than for Baker. And then they both end up in Carolina, right? Odd, weird, but whatever. Then they go their separate ways. And you just couldn't be happier for Sam, just as many of you are happy for Baker for kind of turning things around in Tampa. And Sam did a lot of the same thing. I would love him in Cleveland. Like personally, that'd be awesome if Cleveland was able to go get him. However, the thing with the Browns at the quarterback position is cost. Like you have to go get somebody cheap to mitigate what you're going to have to pay Deshaun. And unfortunately, Sam's gonna get a pretty penny. And that's why for Cleveland, that in my opinion, takes us out of the race for him and puts us like squarely in the race for Kirk, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, ? And some of those others.
I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on Kirk because I think we've talked a lot about him as a fit already. He has the connection with Stefanski. I'll just reiterate what I've been saying. I know that Kirk Cousins isn't like the sexy name. Like people aren't going to get excited about 37-year-old, AARP version of Kirk Cousins. I get that. But for me, it's about the fact that you're going to get him for like $1.2 million. Because I don't care what Terry Fontenot, the GM of the Falcons, says. They can sit there and say, we're going to keep him around. Nobody's paying that type of money for a backup quarterback. It's just not going to happen. So they will, and they're also not going to pay him the $10 million roster bonus that he's due on St. Patrick's Day. So they will cut him. He will become a free agent, and somebody will sign him, and the Browns feel like a good fit. For $1.2 million, my argument is, Megs, why not? Like, why not see if there's something there, if Kevin Stefanski can pull something out of a guy who he worked with before. So I get it's not sexy. It's not going to be it's not some signing that all of a sudden you feel like the Browns are Super Bowl contenders, but it works, right? Like it's fine. I
would say big picture too. Like that's a guy you want, a young quarterback, a Cam Ward, a Shedeur Sanders to learn from, right? That's a good human being to learn from, and I'll leave it at that. But like that is somebody you want in the room. Positive.
It's kind of weird, but yeah,
he's an oddball.
Did you watch Quarterback on Netflix? Did you watch that show? It was weird.
Yeah, I watched Quarterback on Netflix. I appeared in episode 7, the next one after.
They followed Anthony Moeglin around.
This is what Division III quarterbacks used to look like. Yeah, right. I don't have
the last quarterback to beat Mount Union.
Yeah, right. I don't have quite the trophy case that Kirk has. I think his is in like that secret room, right, where he's got all his jerseys and stuff. No, Kirk, oddball for sure.
But he has an empty shelf for Super Bowl trophies. You just, your shelf has something on it, so that's good.
Wow. Yeah, I got one trophy. It's an OAC trophy. How about that, Kirk? I had to listen to Nick Sirianni, a Mountain Union guy, go on his little parade lately about how good Mount is, and got him one. Was able to get him one time. That was pretty fun.
Hey, one's more than Kirk's got. No, but yeah. So that I think that's a good place to sort of leave Kirk. Daniel Jones. I'm curious your thoughts on Daniel Jones because he kind of is like the next in line to be Sam Darnold, right? Like go somewhere, try to revive his career. I'm intrigued a little bit by that, but I'm also like, am I really going to get something different from Daniel Jones than I already got from?
Well, he beat us last year, right? So there's that, right? So he came to Cleveland and got to win there. No, I mean,
everybody beat Cleveland last year. So
yeah, right. The Daniel Jones thing's tough. I mean, he's only 27, so he's still a young kid. I mean, he's a young cat. I call him a kid because I'm just a year older than he is. But has only had 1 year, 2 years over 3,000 yards passing. Rookie year was his best in 24 touchdowns and 12 picks. He can run it a little bit. If you're looking for a career revival, for sure, that will be one that will be a tough sell. And I think, in my opinion, just because, I don't know what the draw is to Kirk Cousins. To Daniel Jones. I remember when he was selected over Dwayne Haskins back in 2019 draft, and I didn't necessarily agree with it then, and it's been a whole lot of average ever since then. So, yeah, I don't know. That one doesn't excite me. And Spence, I think, kind of to your point about Kirk, where you can get him on a cheap contract and maybe a 1-year deal. I think if you're signing Daniel Jones, you're not backing the Brinks truck up to him, but he's going to want a little more time, right? He's not going to have a 1-year deal, or maybe he does, right? Maybe he does get the opportunity to do that. Daniel Jones, I would kind of stay away. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole if it were me.
You remember what Baker Mayfield said when Daniel Jones got drafted, right? When he was like,
I don't remember.
He did an interview where he was like, yeah, people just like overthink the draft. Like Daniel Jones at whatever pick he was overall, like who does that? Like he was like, and then it became like a whole thing. I remember that. That was funny. Any other veteran quarterbacks that you think should be in play, make sense for the Browns, that are on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to hear, and regardless of where you are, what you listen to, the Browns did make a couple phone calls on Matt Stafford. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit that kind of came out of the post-combine, post-combine news dump, if you will. So that was good that they were at least in the conversation. I got
the sense in Indy, by the way, that they weren't willing to give up what they needed to give up to trade for him.
Do you think Kelly would have loved Strongsville or no?
I think there would have been a nice community from Strongsville for her. She could have figured it out. They lived in Detroit for a while, right? Like Detroit's a similar city, like in terms of like with the size and all that. So no, I got the sense though that like the Browns made some calls, but they weren't willing to like go the extra mile to like actually trade for him when push came to shove. Like I think the Giants and Raiders would have been willing to offer more than what Cleveland was. Is kind of the idea that I got. So
yeah, and Tom Brady was flying to Montana to accidentally run into him and all that good stuff. But a couple names kind of out there, right? You don't know what's going to happen with Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. Obviously, he was linked to the Browns during the Deshaun Watson days. I don't know if that excites me. Really, none of the veteran guys really excite me. I mean, truth be told, I know he threw a bunch of interceptions last year, but like Jameis Winston, I know.
What about Joe Milton?
Dude, not Joe Milton. The guy I want really badly is Malik Willis. Like that is a guy. Oh
yeah, that's right. That's your guy.
I've said it. I've dropped a couple breadcrumbs late last year. We talked about it a handful of times here this year. Malik Willis is a guy that I think could be really interesting. He plays for the Packers now. Remember, he got drafted by the Tennessee Titans, was behind Will Levis, goes to the Packers, sticks under Matt LaFleur for is it 1 year or 2 years, and behind Jordan Love. And that dude's got a live arm, man. He's got a live arm. I am squarely in the camp. There's not many people around me in this camp, but I am in the camp of Malik Willis. Go trade a 5th-round pick for him. Go get him and stack it. Because he's still young. It's a young player, somebody who I think you could get on a little bit of a discount deal.
I'm just going to go. I shouldn't even say this is going on a limb. I'm going to make the prediction that Kirk Cousins ends up with the Browns. I'm going to say that's their veteran option.
You're on is coming out of the ground.
I think that's the veteran option they end up with. And that'll kind of be what they pair with whatever rookie they get. Mm-hmm. And we'll be on our merry way for 2025. But that's not groundbreaking. I think everybody sort of already felt that way, and that's been highly reported. But I'm kind of leaning that he ends up being the guy that they end up getting. I don't buy that the Falcons aren't going to cut him.
Spence, you touch you interact with our fan base and from a number of different ways, radio, other podcasts, all sorts of stuff. What's the move or moves plural that Cleveland has to do to like get fans excited? Is it go get Cam Ward? Or I do think the number one. I do think it revolves around the quarterback. Like it revolves around getting the quarterback. But I also like if they got Abdul Carter, I think that would sort of help people get excited to an extent because they'd be like, great, we got this new pass rusher. And then I think it would ease the pain of like, we probably need to trade Myles Garrett now. So I think those are maybe the two things. I actually think there's another thing that could help fans at least be somewhat excited about next season, which would be bringing back Nick Chubb. But it doesn't sound like that is something that's in the cards, at least not according to Mary Kay Cabot at Cleveland.com. She wrote in a piece today that it's the end of the Nick Chubb era in Cleveland. And she said, quote, it's sad it has ended this way. The face of the franchise since he rumbled through the doors in 2018. Chubb should have finished his career with the team that drafted and developed him, but the crushing knee injury thwarted those plans.
She goes on to kind of compare it to the Joe Thomas situation, and basically alludes to the idea that she hopes Chubb is able to go continue his career somewhere else and have success. There was a line in here too that I thought was interesting where she said the Browns gave him last season to return from injury, make more than $2 million, and walk away with some grace and dignity, despite being a shadow of his former bruised self. I'm not saying that was harsh necessarily, but like that feels like kind of a slight by the Browns. Like, hey, we'll give you one last shot to like ride off into the sunset. Like, and if you don't do it, see ya. Like that. Like that's like just for how much they talk good about Nick Chubb. It felt a little
harsh.
Yeah, a little harsh. But and maybe that's true. I don't know. I have some thoughts on this, but what was your reaction to seeing that today?
So my initial reaction is like, from a football standpoint, it unfortunately makes sense. Like, I mean, he just wasn't the same. He's now on 2 huge injuries, and there's a lot of good running backs out there. It is going to be impossible to swallow. Like that, when that news breaks that Nick Chubb signs a 1-year contract with
the Pittsburgh Steelers,
or the freaking Arizona Cardinals, and the worst, the part that's really going to be hard for Browns fans to swallow if that does happen is it's going to be 2 years, $1.7 million. Like, it's just kind of like the fall from grace is going to be a free fall, I think, because he just didn't look the same. He didn't look the same. Then he goes and breaks his foot, and it's like, oh my gosh, like you feel so bad for him. Obviously growing up a Browns fan, it was the years when 2018 through 2023 when he got hurt. He's the best running back in football, and now you see what Saquon Barkley is as the best running back in football, and compare that to what we saw from Nick Chubb last year, and you're like, it's not even. We're not even talking about the same. We're not even talking about the same category, right? It's sad, man. It's gonna hurt if that is the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, and the Saquon situation doesn't help matters because he's up in the market for running backs now. Maybe Nick Chubb could find more money, and that sort of signals the end of his time in Cleveland. What I think, I don't know. Like, again, I Mary Kay is very well sourced, so I'm not saying she's wrong here. Like, she must be getting indications that he's not coming back. I just think like it's not surprising that he might not come back, because we saw last week when Andrew Berry sort of talked about it, he admitted like, yeah, we're going to let him test the market. Like, so this has kind of been like writing on the wall that he's going to get a chance to sign somewhere else. So that was always a real possibility here. I just don't know that, like, are we sure we can rule it out right now that he's coming back? Because that's the thing for me is like, what if he test the market? And like my feeling on it, and again, I don't have the sources that Mary Kay does, obviously, but my feeling on it is like they're gonna let him go test the market, and if he comes back and says like, hey, this team's offering me this, can you do it? Like almost like the Joe Shane Saquon thing last year, where he called him and was like, listen, look, whatever offers you get, come back to us and we'll see if we can make it work. Like that, it almost feels like that's the way the Browns would go about this, right? Like they'd be like, just let us know, see what your worth is, see what your value is, and if we can get there, we'll try to get there. I just find it hard to believe that like the week before free agency, they're just like drawing the line in the sand of like, yeah, this guy who we hold in such esteem, who's been a pillar of the organization, who the fan base loves, you're not coming back next year. That's it, you're done.
Like, we just broke.
Unless like their demands are just so high at this point that they're like, yeah, there's no chance. Like that's the old, I don't know. To me, it just doesn't add up to being like, we know a week out, he's definitely not coming back, but maybe I'm wrong here.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised, to see that headline from Mary Kay, and then even to get in and read it and be like, yeah, I mean, it would make sense. And I said it last week, if you told me to put money on it, is he going to be a Brown or somewhere else? I would say he's going to be playing in Cleveland in 2025. Now, I'm one of the coldest bettors of all time right now, so do with that information what you will. But I just think that it is, it's not off the table, right? The story is still being written. He's still going to go out and find his value. Maybe Cleveland's like, tell us what your value is. How does the market see you? Because we see you as X. What does the rest of the league see you? And
I'm assuming they've had conversations, right? Like, certainly. I'm assuming they've talked to his reps, and maybe they do have a sense of like what it's going to cost, and they're like, okay, maybe we don't know if we can go there. So maybe they have drawn the line in the sand. Like I said, I could be totally wrong here. I just kind of feel like do I think there's no path back? Like, no, I don't necessarily know. Like, for a guy who wants to be here, I think the door would still sort of be open. Plus, I've been saying this all offseason. Like, it's the easiest PR in the world for the Browns to bring back Nick Chubb.
Dude, in a year that Miles is going to get traded and the world is burning and all the stuff, you're like, all right, just give us 24. Like, give us Batman for at least one more season, just so we can stay sane for 6 more months.
Yeah, it's an easy thing if you're trying to like smooth things over with the fan base that was very apathetic last year and is still sort of reeling from the Deshaun thing. Like, it's an easy way to sort of get people somewhat excited about next year. And he wouldn't be your lead back necessarily either. Like, you'd still draft a guy, in my opinion. He'd kind of be paired with that guy, but I don't know. We'll see if this is truly like we're dug in and it's over, or if there's a possibility next week that things come back to the table, or in a couple weeks if he doesn't go quickly here in free agency. That brings us, Anthony, to the final portion of the show. You want to go around the AFC North here a little bit. What are the headlines that you're looking at around the division?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you go right down 71 and go to Cincinnati, and it's the franchise tagging for the second year in a row of T. Higgins. He gets tagged down in Cincinnati, and he's going to get paid $26.2 million next year. That's one hell of a paycheck. And it's an interesting conversation because that is a hefty price to pay for a guy who wants to be on a contract. Every player in the NFL, bar none, wants to be on the franchise tag. That just means you have zero future security. Yes, you get paid a lot of money, but there's no long-term contract. So, the result of that is a lot of these guys who are on, who do get tagged have hamstring injury, right? Or their ankle, they roll their ankle in practice or whatever, just to take themselves out of harm's way, because long-term, if they tear their ACL in the game or they take a big hit or snap their leg like Nick Chubb did, like, your future could potentially be toast. That's why they hate the franchise tag. But T gets tagged again. And there's some stories wherever you're getting your information from. Some people are saying that the Bengals are trying to complete a long-term deal to keep him in Cincy. Some people are saying that they're trying to execute a sign and trade. I think it's really interesting, Spence, because the one problem, if you're Cincinnati, you look at your roster from last year and you look at your season from last year and you're like, hey, where did things go wrong? And the last place you point to is wide receiver. And for them to commit a big dollar amount to that receiver room in a year where if they improve that defense, they are in the AFC Championship game potentially, with Joe Burrow at quarterback and Jamar Chase running around. And I just feel like that team has so many holes that you get this shiny, pretty toy in T. Higgins, but I don't think it addresses any of your major problems.
I think it would be galactically stupid for the Bengals to pay T. Higgins and give him like a contract extension. I'm being like, I get it's Joe Burrow's guy. He's going to go to bat for these guys. He's trying to get them all paid. He's like, it won't be a problem. We'll make it work. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's fine. Like, you're not the GM though. Like you got to, if you're a GM of a team, like, you got to think about this smartly. Like, T. Higgins has been, he's been injured more often than he's probably played. I don't even know how many games he played in last year, but he's injured so much. I get that when he's out there. What did you say? Like, they were 4-1 or something with him, or 1-4 without him?
They were 1-4 without him. Okay. And they were whatever with him.
Yeah. So I'm not saying like he's not important, but like, just for the value that you're getting, can't you draft? Like, wouldn't you think you can draft a guy that comes with like similar value to T. Higgins, but he's going to be way cheaper for you? And like, you start fresh with like a new wide receiver for Joe Burrow. Obviously you pay Chase. He's one of the best receivers in football. But I just think like this has gone on so long. Your franchise tagging him over and over again. Yeah. You're investing a lot of money. Like, just draft a new guy. Like, start fresh with a new number 2 receiver. It's Joe Burrow. Like, what is Joe Burrow worried about? Losing T. Higgins and then like he can't be a good quarterback anymore? Like, you'll find, if you find the next guy and you hit on another receiver, you're fine.
Dude, and that's you make a good point, because like everyone talks about like Super Bowl windows. I think the window with this group is closed, right? Whereas you have to shake it up for them, because you can't continue to pay the best position on your team. Jamar Chase is the guy you're going to go with, right? So you have to go with him. And to your point, get cheaper, get younger, because the rest of your team, you can't afford to pay 2 wide receivers top dollar, because you can't stop a nosebleed on the other side of the football. And it costs you 5 or so wins, right? Think back to the Chiefs game where the Chiefs scored 41 points. Think back to the Ravens game where the Ravens beat them in overtime, 38-35. Like, there was a number of games where the offense scored over 30 points and they still lost because they couldn't stop anything. And guess what? As long as you got number 9 in the backfield calling the shots, you're going to be in it. I don't care if he's throwing to me on the outside, if he's throwing to you, or if he's throwing to Jamar Chase, you're going to be in the football game. And I don't think you need T. Higgins to win you football games in the AFC to get to the playoffs. But if it's as Cleveland Browns on SI, pay him that money. Pay that man that money and keep going on the route they are.
I mean, I get, like I said, like you have an established receiver versus like it's a crapshoot in the draft and you get some sort of unknown. But like if you hit on that guy, you got a perfect replacement who's cheaper and it solves a lot of the Bengals' problems because they know they can't afford everybody right now. And like you said, they got needs on defense.
Dude, and if Joe Burrow's the guy that everyone says he is and that he says he is, then he could throw to anybody. And he should be able to, yeah. You know, that's why you have your MVP, right? Everyone thought he should have been MVP last year. You know, that's why you have him. So because he could throw to Oshivash and Tyler Irvin and Jamar Chase, and he doesn't need all the bells and whistles on the outside that some others do.
What else are around the AFC?
It's the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, right? Who are they going to go with? People are saying it's starting to the rumors are starting to sound like it's going to be Justin Fields in Pittsburgh being the starter. That quarterback position last year was an interesting case study where Justin started the year, got off to a nice start. Russell comes back from injury, starts his portion of the year pretty solid, and then felt like he fell right off a cliff, right? And it's the same.
Are you a Marvel guy?
I am not a Marvel guy, no.
Because there's a scene in Endgame where Thanos is sitting there and he's like, "You couldn't live with your own failures, so where did that bring you? Back to me." That's what this feels like. It's like the Steelers started Fields. He was really good. Then they started Russell Wilson, and then they lost out at the end of the year, 4 straight games, whatever the hell it was. Yeah. And then they lose the first round of the playoffs again. And then it's like, oh, you couldn't live with your own failures, so you're back to Justin Fields again. Hey, come on back.
Dude, do they ever, they're so interesting. I don't know what they are in ultimate purgatory, right? They are in NFL purgatory. They feel like they've been there for forever. I don't know how it would feel like to be a Steeler fan. I
mean, it's crazy because I think Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in football.
So do I.
I would die on that hill. But I also can understand where Steelers fans are coming from, where they're like, yeah, I just, we're kind of over this song and dance every year where we get to the playoffs and we lose. I mean, it's the same thing the Bengals did for all those years, right? At some point, you just got to rip off the Band-Aid. But it's I don't know. It's hard because the second Mike Tomlin gets fired, some team's going to scoop him up. He'd be a head coach in a second. It won't. It will take no time.
Spence, within the same day, he'll be hired somewhere.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't know. It's interesting. Has he run his course? Players still seem to continue to say hey, we love playing for Coach Tomlin. So I don't know. But that's an interesting situation. And yeah, I listen. I like Justin Fields. I've always thought there was something in there that maybe we haven't seen yet. But I also think at this point, we're so far in. I think what you see is what you get. Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to find some untapped thing with Justin Fields, but he feels like a good fit for them until they actually have a chance to draft a quarterback that puts them over the top, which who knows how long that's going to be because they keep making the playoffs.
And they're drafting in the middle of the pack every single year, and they're never in contention to go get a guy. How scary would they be with just I don't even know, anybody. What if they went and got Matt Stafford? You're all right, you're an AFC.
I think they were in on him a little bit. I think they called at least.
But I don't know if they don't go to try to make the big splash play. They're always yeah, give me this discount guy.
Maybe next year's the year. Steelers are very conservative, but maybe next year's the year they're hey, we're going to trade 2 firsts and we're going to get up to the top 10 and get because Albert Breer wrote earlier that teams are already eyeing next year's class with Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller and what's his name? Lenoris, what's his name from South Carolina? I can't remember off the top of my head. Sellers, Lenore Sellers. Yeah. So if that's true, maybe there's going to be 5 or 6 guys last year where the Steelers are hey, we're drafting 20th, but we can get up to 8 and get one of these guys. I don't know. But yeah, they definitely are in purgatory. And I think Justin Fields kind of keeps them in purgatory, even though I like Justin Fields.
So. And they feel like they love being there. Tomlin's always all right, here we go. We're going to run the same exact thing back. Hey, guys, going to be the same result. What do they say about insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again.
Eventually, they got to win in the first round of the playoffs, right? Maybe, I don't know.
They have to, but every time they get there, it's like, all right, is T.J. Watt going to have 12 sacks and score 6 touchdowns, or is he not going to have any tackles? What's it going to be like?
I actually thought they had a chance in that game too, because I was like, yeah, they always seem to play Baltimore tough, but didn't happen. All right, that's going to do it for us. Another edition of our podcast here through Cleveland Browns on SI. As always, head on over to si.com/NFL/Browns. We got a bunch of written content, obviously, about the offseason, about what the Browns are thinking post-combine, kind of what's on the table for this team, on the menu for this team as they navigate their quarterback situation and much, much more. But also stick around here on the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel, where we got plenty of content. Like I said, go back to last week if you missed any of the press conferences from players. We got Cam Ward up there. We got Shedeur Sanders up there. We got a bunch of other guys. So
they'll be tagged. They'll be tagged in the description. I'll tag them in the description.
There you go. But you can check out all that, and you can check out more of our conversations, both from the combine and just in general, as Anthony and I keep things rolling throughout the offseason. Count you down to free agency next week, and of course, the draft, which is a little over a month away now, a month and a half. We'll say it's a month and a half, but still plenty to talk about. We look forward to getting you ready for free agency with a free agency teaser next week and breaking down whatever happens in free agency later in the week next week. Should be a lot of fun stuff coming your way. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. Keep on following along with your Cleveland Browns, with the Cleveland Browns on SI.